After years of procrastinating, I'm finally here to talk about Need for Speed ProStreet. One of the big reasons this review was delayed is because back when I originally planned to cover it after Need for Speed Carbon, the digital version I owned through EA Origin just refused to install. Super frustrating, especially since I paid for it. At the time, I didn't own a physical copy either, so I had no way to play it. I ended up skipping it and moving forward with the rest of my Need for Speed reviews, figuring I'd come back to it eventually. Well, that eventually turned into 4 years, so my bad. But I'm genuinely excited to finally talk about this title because I've been looking forward to seeing how I feel about it after all these years away. Need for Speed ProStreet was published by Electronic Arts and developed by EA Black Box, releasing in November 2007. Like a lot of EA titles from that era, it pretty much dropped on everything: the PlayStation 2, the PS3, Xbox 360, Nintendo Wii, PC, PSP, and even mobile. I originally played it on the PlayStation 2, but I'll tell you right now, if you're going to experience this game properly, a 7th gen console like the PS3 or the 360 is absolutely the way to go. Going into this review, I knew I was going to revisit a game that, both back then and even now, is pretty divisive among the fans of the Need for Speed community. With ProStreet, Black Box completely ditched the open world street racing vibe that had become a staple of the series, and instead went for something much more structured and track focused. It was their attempt to blend the arcade style racing Need for Speed was known for with a more grounded, almost simulation-like experience. Though to be clear, it never fully commits to being a sim racer. It rides that awkward middle ground, and I believe that's where a lot of the division comes from. One of the things I loved most about the Need for Speed franchise during this era was how they started incorporating story elements to motivate you through the game. It all began with Underground 1, got more fleshed out in Underground 2, and then took a huge leap with Most Wanted, where they brought in live action stars to spice things up. Then Carbon went all in with dramatic cutscenes, and I loved it. Out of all the games from that period, Carbon stuck with me the most because it gave me exactly what I wanted: fast cars and a fun, pulpy story to get me hooked. Was it Oscar worthy? Of course not, but it didn't need to be, it was just fun. So naturally, it was disappointing to see that ProStreet completely abandoned all of that. After years of building up story-driven racing experiences, this game drops it entirely. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, technically there is a story. You're trying to become the best racer and beat Ryo Watanabe. And yeah, sure, that's the premise, but let's be real, no one was playing ProStreet for its story. Ryo as an antagonist is just completely forgettable. I don't know what it is, he just doesn't hit the same way characters like Razor or Darius did in the previous games. All he ever does is talk trash constantly, and not even in a cool or intimidating way. It just gets to the point where it's almost comical. He just gives off this whiny baby with zero sportsmanship, which is super weird in a game that's trying to be presenting itself more as a serious professional racing environment. And sure, I get that people like that exist in real life, but let's be honest, no one likes them either. That's Ryo in a nutshell. So yeah, if I'm judging ProStreet based on its story, it's not good. But in fairness, I don't think Black Box really cared about the story this time around, and it definitely wasn't a selling point for the game, so while it is a letdown compared to the past entries, I kind of get why it ended up the way it did. That all changed when they went right back to Need for Speed Undercover, but you guys can watch my review of that. The only true compelling narrative element ProStreet brought to the Need for Speed franchise was the introduction of its protagonist, Ryan Cooper. There's a popular theory in the community that Ryan is actually the same character that we've all been playing as ever since Underground 1, and honestly, I am 100% on board with that. The idea just makes sense. Throughout ProStreet, the announcer constantly references Ryan as a former street racer who used to race at night, but has now stepped into the professional racing scene. That alone connects so well with the vibes of the earlier games. It adds this layer of continuity that, even if it wasn't intentional, makes the experience more meaningful when revisiting those older titles. I love the theory because it gives us something to hold on to across a series that rarely connects its protagonists. It makes Ryan Cooper feel like the glue tying the mid-2000s era of Need for Speed together. Honestly, I think it'd be awesome if EA brought back Ryan in a future game, especially now that fan nostalgia is so strong. He's the kind of character that the Need for Speed community deserves to see return. So with Black Box essentially dropping the narrative for ProStreet, they shifted gears towards a more career-focused progression system. Instead of following a storyline, you work your way through a series of structured race days, each packed with multiple event types, and the goal is to conquer different racing disciplines. build up your reputation, and eventually qualify for major events called showdowns. Win enough of those and you'll earn your chance to take on Rio for the title of Showdown King. It's a much more methodical tournament-style approach compared to the aggressive street racing of earlier games. Like every Need for Speed game, Pro Street brings its own set of racing styles to the table. You've got the classic circuit races rebranded here as grip events, which are further broken down into subtypes like sector shootouts or time trials. Drifting makes its return from Carbon, drag racing is back too, and it's a lot more fun and engaging this time around compared to the previous entries. Then there's something new, speed challenges. As far as I can recall, this mode only ever appeared in Pro Street, and it's intense, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. The gameplay in Pro Street takes a noticeable turn more towards a SimCade experience. The cars feel heavier, the physics are more grounded, and overall the handling leans much closer to realism than the arcade style fans were used to. This shift might feel jarring if you're coming straight from Most Wanted or Carbon, but it's clear that Black Box was trying to give players a taste of a more serious racing experience. One of the biggest changes is the introduction of real gameplay affecting damage. Sure, you could see your cars get a little scratched up in earlier games, but Pro Street takes it way further. Crumpled hoods, shattered windshields, blown tires, you name it. It's the first time Need for Speed treated car damage not just as a visual effect, but as a real game mechanic. In fact, it goes beyond what even some sim racers like Gran Turismo were doing at the time. And even more so when fixing your car costs money. Depending on what kind of car you are driving and how bad the damage is, repairs can seriously eat into your budget. It adds a layer of strategy. Do you drive aggressively and risk expensive repairs, or play it safe and miss out on the top performance of what your car can do? When competing in race days, you have two options. You can either win the event by placing well in a few races, or you can dominate it by completing and excelling in the majority of the events offered. The game rewards you based on performance with both cash bonuses and a set of reward cards that you get to pick from. These cards can offer all kinds of benefits like insurance claims that can cover damage or total losses, extra money, or if you're lucky, the rare ability to grab any car from the car lot for free. I actually was fortunate enough to score one of those rare free cards during the later half of my career and used it to snag a Pagani Zonda, which saved me a ton of time grinding for cash. That kind of moment adds a nice surprise factor to the progression, and it feels really satisfying when it pays off. Speaking of which, the car selection in Pro Street is really solid. I love how many options you have. You start out with the Nissan 240 SX, and as you progress, you can work your way up to cars like the Challengers, Beamers, Mustangs, Lamborghinis, and of course my personal favorite, the Nissan Skyline GTR R34. If that car is in the game, you better believe I'm driving it. And just like any Need for Speed game, Pro Street comes with plenty of car customization. The auto sculpt feature makes a return, and this time it's not just visual, it actually affects your car's performance. Aerodynamics and handling are impacted by how you shape your body kits, which adds a nice layer of strategy. There's a wide variety of parts to choose from, giving you tools to really personalize your ride. On top of that, Pro Street goes deep into tuning. You can adjust things like tire pressure, gear ratios, ride height, and much more. If you're someone who loves fine-tuning your setup to perfection, this game gives you plenty to work with. As for the visual side, like in Carbon, you can still mess around with vinyls, decals, and paint jobs. But honestly, vinyls in particular can be very tedious, unfortunately. The system is slow and not very user-friendly, so most of the time I just pick a color I like and call it a day. Now, I want to circle back and dig a little deeper into the different racing modes, starting with grip events. Honestly, they're solid, nothing groundbreaking here, but they're fun and satisfying to play, so I don't have too much to critique here. Drifting, on the other hand, now that's where things can get a little bit complicated. Compared to Carbon, the drifting mechanics in Pro Street feel like a dramatic change of pace. Just like before, the car kind of throws itself into a drift, but that feels weirdly out of place in a game that's supposedly going for a more grounded, realistic style here. When it works, drifting could be a lot of fun, but it takes a ton of time and patience and practice to really get the feel for it. The learning curve is pretty steep, and sometimes it just feels like the controls are fighting against you. Depending on the track, it can feel like the game is trying to drift for you, and then suddenly the car has a mind of its own. In most of the earlier Need for Speed games, I never had a problem with drift events. They were some of my favorite parts, but ProStreet, this is the one game where I legit almost threw my controller across the room from how frustrating it got. I eventually got through it. I even managed to beat the Drift King, but man, it came with a lot of yelling and swear words along the way. Drifting in ProStreet can be fun, but it can just easily ruin your day if it catches you off guard. Now, after being completely absent in Carbon, drag racing finally returns to ProStreet, and for the first time in the franchise, it's actually done right. I've never been a big fan of the drag racing in the earlier Need for Speed games, and if you've seen my previous reviews, you already know how I feel about that. But ProStreet finally gets it. No traffic to dodge, no weird cornering in a mode that's supposed to be about a straight line speed. Just you, your car, your opponent, and a clean strip of pavement. Each drag race consists of 3 heats, and whichever one is your fastest time is the one that counts. Before each heat, you get a chance to warm up your tires, which adds a cool strategic layer. Nail it and your grip and launch improve noticeably. One of my favorite parts is how you can actually get disqualified if you jump the line just a bit too early, which I definitely did more than a few times. And then there's the wheelie competitions. If your car has enough power and tuned properly, you can pull off massive wheelies and see how far your ride can make it down the strip. If you're anything like me and upgraded the living hell out of your Challenger, you'll probably just be dragging the back bumper across the track for the entire race and never lose. It's dumb, loud, and over-the-top fun, and honestly, it's one of my favorite parts of the game. And then finally, we have the speed challenges. This mode, I will be honest, I was not that big of a fan. However, I will give it credit. This is the mode that really puts the speed in Need for Speed. The sense of velocity here is absolutely insane, probably the most intense in the entire franchise. You're flying down long stretches of highway at terrifying speeds, and when it's working, it's a complete adrenaline rush. But here's the problem. You are constantly on the edge of disaster. One wrong move, just one, and you're flipping, flying, and slamming into barriers in the most dramatic way possible. And sure, crashes are a spectacle. They're fun to watch the first few times. But after a while, it just gets frustrating. These events punish the slightest mistake, and the more it happens, the less fun it becomes. I get what they're going for, but the margin for error is so small that it turns what could have been the coolest mode in the game into something that is more stressful than satisfying. The one note I will add, however, is that I love using nitrous in this game. Depending on which upgrade you have will determine on how many uses of NOS you have through a race, which is how it should be. When you finally decide to hit the nitrous, it really feels like that you're now flying down the road and catching up to your opponents. I absolutely love it. Graphically, the game looks beautiful. The way the tracks are designed and the environments make for a great time when racing down towards the finish line. The presentation of everything also is done to perfection with festivals. The announcer, crowds, and the layout on everybody's cars just sitting in place all give that vibe off perfectly. The music is also pretty good. There are some good tracks to listen to, but I will be honest, it's certainly not my favorite or something that I'm going to remember. Need for Speed has had much better soundtracks than this. So how do I feel about Need for Speed ProStreet in 2025? I think it's definitely something that I think every Need for Speed fan should have in their collection, and give it a try if you haven't already. In the grand scheme of things though, I could potentially see myself coming back to this at some point in the future if I was playing through all of the games again, but it won't probably be anytime soon. Guys, my name is Pedro Ordonez, also known as GameLight7. Please subscribe, comment, like, thumbs up. Do whatever you guys can to support this channel. Let me know what you would like to see me talk about in a future video, and I will see you guys next time in my next video. Peace out.